This lecture video, we will go through some important concepts behind the momentum transport, as well as the quantities of interest that we need in order to solve the following examples on the momentum transport. Let's imagine that we have a situations where there is a fluid in between the two plates of area A. Area in here is illustrated like this. Okay, imagine that we have two plates with the area of A, and then before time 0, the fluid is still, so the plate is also still, and then at time equals 0, the lower plate in here is suddenly set in motion in these directions with the velocity of v. Okay, so as the velocity is the lower plate set in motions, then the velocity build up in unsteady flow. So at particular t, the velocity will have this profile. Okay, with increasing t, then the velocity profile will develop. Okay, it will have this particular shape, where this direction basically denotes the increasing time. And then at a value of t much larger than 0, then the velocity profile has a linear profile. Okay, where the velocity on the upper plate is basically 0 because the upper plate does not move, while the velocity on the bottom plate in here is equal to v. And so remember that this velocity in here is in the directions of x. However, the velocity gradient is on the directions of y. Okay, for the situations that we illustrate in here, we are dealing with the laminar flow, because laminar flow in here refers to the fluids of the low molecular weight. Okay, so this situation, this particular scenario in here will be used to derive the Newton's law of viscosity. Okay, as this next slide basically just tell you what I have tell you on the previous slide. And we have two type of flow. One is laminar flow, which is the case in here, and then we have the other case is turbulent flow. So this laminar and turbulent flow, it depends on the Reynolds numbers. For the high Reynolds numbers, then we have a turbulent flow, whereas for the low Reynolds number, then we have a laminar flow. So for the previous scenario, we can derive the velocity that is required to maintain the velocity v for the lower plate, and then we, by the physical principle, we can know that the force should be proportional to the area and also proportional to the velocity, and then the velocity should also be inversely proportional to the distance between the plate. So if you check in here, this is the distance between the plates, okay, which we call in here y. So by using these things, then we can derive this particular formula in here. F over A is equal this proportional constant multiplied by the velocity divided by the distance between the plate. The constant of the proportionality in here is defined as the viscosity, and viscosity in here is normally defined as the physical property that characterizes the resistance to flow. Meaning that if we have a higher viscosity, then it basically resists flow more than the one with the low viscosity. And then we now switch to the notation that will be used throughout the books. Basically, in here we are not dealing with the normal pressure, we are dealing with the shear force. So in here we have this, the force in the x directions applies on the unit area perpendicular to the y directions. So it is understood that this force exerted by the fluid of lesser y on the fluid of greater y. So the fluid of the lesser y in here will have higher force and it will be exerted on the fluid of the greater y, basically. So then we have this particular quantity that we define F over A will be tau yx minus mu dvx per dy. Of particular interest in here is that you have these two subscript in here. Note that this x in here refers to the directions of the velocity, or basically your momentum, whereas this particular symbol in here, y, it refers to the directions of the momentum transfer. And another thing that in this equation basically state that the shearing force per unit area is proportional to the negative of the velocity gradient, which is often called the Newton's law of viscosity. Then you may wonder, in here it does not come up with any negative sign, but in here it comes up with the negative sign in here. So it is very important that you go back into the figure 1 in order to understand why this is like this. As you can see in here, there is a velocity gradient developed in here. So as you can see in here, the velocity increasing in the directions of negative y. So if I put a mark in here that this dvx per dy is positive in this particular directions, but the force or the momentum transport is basically applies into these directions in here. So this is basically the directions of the, I would say, momentum transfer. The momentum transfer is in the direction because obviously, let's say the fluid in this particular thickness, it will have a higher velocity that will be transferred into the fluid in this one, and then in this one, and in this one, in this one. So the directions of the transfer is on the directions of the increasing y, but the velocity is increasing in the directions of this. So meaning that the momentum transfer or the force exert has a opposite sign of the directions where the velocity gradient increases. Okay, that's why you have this particular negative in this sign. So it's very important that you really understand this concept of why we have this negative sign. Okay. Newton's law of viscosity actually cannot be referred as law because it's actually has an empirical nature, but it basically also consistent with the theory. So like we said again, this particular equation and or law is basically applies to the liquid with the molecular weight of less than 5,000. Okay, that's why these liquids are also called as a Newtonian fluids. And the polymeric liquid suspension, paste, slurries, and other complex fluids is called non-Newtonian fluids. The other way that we interpret this equations before is so there is two ways that we interpret those one. The first one will be as the force in the x directions on a unit area perpendicular to the y directions. So the force is in the x directions, but the unit area is perpendicular to the y directions. Okay, the other one that I showed you before is that there is a flux of x momentum in the positive y direction, and that basically is consistent with my definitions of these two in here. So x is the directions of your velocity or the momentum, and then y is the directions of your momentum transfer. So it's very important to note this thing, otherwise you will get confused. Okay, so the term flux in here refers to the flow per unit area, and this interpretation is consistent with the molecular picture of the momentum transport and also the kinetic theories of gases and liquids. You will see that later on when we go into the heat and mass transport, we will have this particular analogy as well. Okay, so the Newton's law can be interpreted in terms of the force and also in terms of the momentum transport. In terms of the momentum transport, then the momentum goes downhill from a region of high velocity to a region of low velocity. As in the nature, if you have like for example something that is hot, then the heat will be transferred from that particular component that have high temperature to the component that have a low temperature. So everything that is in nature is always like that. So in this case it's the same. So the velocity can be regarded as something that flows from the high velocity to the low velocity. Okay, and then in here we also have another particular quantity called the kinematic viscosity, and kinematic viscosity is equal to the viscosity divided by the density. And then if we go back into that equations again, we can derive that the unit of the viscosity is equal to the Pascal multiplied by seconds or kilogram per meter second. And here we give you a bit of snapshot into the units of particular interest in the Newton's law of viscosity, as well as a viscosity of water and air at 1 atm pressure, and then viscosity of some gases and liquid at atmospheric pressure. What is important in here is if you can see the magnitude of the viscosity in here, the viscosity of the liquids are way larger than the viscosity of the gases. Okay, that is very important for you to have an understanding of your magnitude of the viscosity of the liquid and then the viscosity of the gases. Another thing that is of interest is also when you increase the temperature, you can see that the viscosity of the water is decreasing, whereas in here if you increase the temperature, for example, you can see that that actually the viscosity increases with increasing temperature. Okay, that is the different things, okay, between the gases and the liquids. That can be taught or explained in terms of the way that the gases are packing or the liquid are packing. So in gases, the momentum is transported by the molecules in free flight between collisions, but in liquids, normally the transport takes place by the intermolecular forces. So with increasing temperature, then the intermolecular forces get reduced, whereas in gases with increasing temperature, then there will be more interactions between the gases molecule. That's why the viscosity increases. Okay, and then once we get that Newton's law of viscosity, we can also generalize the Newton's law of viscosity. Okay, so we can consider that we have a general flow pattern where we have a Vx, Vy, and Vz. And then this Vx can be depending on the x, y, z, and t. And that will be generalized to all these three components in here. If we generalize these three components in here, we should have a 9 stress components, Ti, G, because I in here can be x, y, and z, and then j can be x, y, and z. So you have 3 multiplied by 3, and then this one will be equal to 9. imagine that you have this particular fluid cube elements in here, okay, and then this point in here is defined as x, y, and then z. And imagine at an instant of time, if we slice the volume element in such a way as to remove half of the fluid within it, and then we basically want to determine the force that has to be applied in order to replace the force that has been exerted on that surface by the fluid that was removed. So if I go in here, for example, if I remove this particular cube, okay, this particular cube is basically half that cube, and then we put in here the notations of the pressure that has to be applied in order for us to maintain the balance after we remove that half, okay. And this one is on the surface of x, and then this one in the y directions, and then this one is on the z directions basically. Okay, then what we there will be two contributions of the forces. One is associated with the pressure and the other one is with the viscous forces. The pressure force is always perpendicular to the exposed surface, okay, whereas the viscous force is actually, they are not neither perpendicular to the surface or nor parallel to it. Okay, so in here we can see that if we go back into the figure in here, your P is always perpendicular to the surface, like in here as well the P, and then in here as well the P, but your shear stress is not doesn't always it's not perpendicular nor parallel. Okay, so this one is your viscous force, or we call it shear stress. And then based on those illustrations, then we can derive the molecular stress tensor or the molecular momentum flux tensor. What is important in here is you notice that for in the x you have three components, x, y, and z, and this happens for each of those. But the most important thing in here is if you see that this one is x and then x, then you have a pressure component. If this is y and y, you have the pressure component. If it is z and z, you have the p component. But if the first subscript is different with the second subscript, then you don't have the pressure component, or the pressure component is basically absent. So that thing is the thing that you can have a feeling on this molecular stress tensor. Then if we continue ahead with our generalizations, then we can say that our molecular momentum fluxes is basically consisting of the pressure with the viscous force. Okay, and then this one is called the normal stresses, and then this one is called the shear stresses. Note again that if the first subscript is equal to the second subscript, then we have this pressure component. But if the first subscript is different with the second subscript, then we don't have the pressure component. I don't want you to basically dwell too much on the details of the Kronecker delta, but you will understand as we go into the examples. Basically, the two quantities that have the two subscript associated with the coordinate directions, meaning that we have two directions, and they are called tensors. Okay, and then this particular quantity in here is defined as the viscous stress tensor. This quantity in here is the molecular stress tensor, and then P is defined as the pressure. If we define the value of the viscous stress tensor, then we have this 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 I, J, K, L. So I consisting of x, y, and z, J also x, y, z, K, x, y, z, L also x, y, z, then 3 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 3 will be equal to 81. And then we can assume that the time derivative or time integral should not appear in the expression. And then we have another assumption that we do not expect any viscous force to be present if the fluid is in the state of pure rotations. Okay, so that means that tau ij should be a symmetric combination of the velocity gradients. Then we can basically derive that there will be only two possible combinations, this one and this combinations in here. Okay, if that is the case, then we can only get the shear stress as expressions of this. Okay, so then we have reduced the number of the viscosity coefficients from ACT1 to 3. And then we want the equation 6 to simplify to equation 2 in the particular flow situations. So that equation of 2 has to be a special case of equation 6. Okay, and then another finding is that the scalar constant of B in here can be set equal to this quantity in here, which we call dilatational viscosity. And this is why we know from the kinetic theory that K is 0 for monatomic gases at low density. Therefore, the required generalization for the Newton's law of viscosity can be simplified into these particular equations in here. Okay, and then in terms of the vector tensor notation, it can be written as in this form in here. Then we have known before that this particular thing is called the viscosity, but this particular things in here is called the dilatational viscosity. In solving a fluid dynamics problem or momentum transfer problem, we don't necessarily be interested with solving this second term in here, because if the fluid is a gas, then we can assume that this K in here is 0, or if the fluid is a liquid and it is incompressible, then we can assume that this particular term in here will be equal to 0. The dilatational viscosity is only important to describe sound absorption in polyatomic gases and the fluid dynamics of liquids containing gas bubbles. Okay, I'm capping my video here, and I will continue my my next the slides in the next video. Thank you for listening.